This is Hockey Talk, where we talk everything hockey. I am John.
And I'm Mike.
All right, Mike, let's go. Now, the very first thing on the board for tonight is Johnny Gaudreau and the Columbus Blue Jackets and how they handled this whole thing. Now, Mike, this is what happened at game time. The team stood still as 13 seconds, which is Johnny Gaudreau's number, ran off the clock, and with his left wing position vacant, the Blue Jackets sent four skaters onto the ice instead of the usual five. The puck dropped, and the Blue Jackets, Sean Monahan, passed it to Florida's Sam Bennett. Now, I believe all three of them played together in Calgary. Is that correct? I think that's how it
Bennett and
went.
Monahan, yeah, they did with
Yeah.
Gaudreau, yeah.
So, in case anyone doesn't know, Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew, they were killed on August the 29th when police said a suspected drunken driver struck them while they were riding their bicycles on a rural road in New Jersey on the eve of their sister Katie's wedding. I mean, just unbelievable, just horrible. Fans received a number 13 patch. I noticed that the players had that patch on their jersey. I believe it's the same patch that they received at the game. And there was also a big 13 on the ice behind the net. It was an emotional, and I don't think there was many dry eyes in the entire arena, Mike. I thought the Blue Jackets handled things top notch with a tremendous amount of class and respect, a very difficult situation. Mike, what do you think? I mean,
Uh,
maybe the Blue Jackets are a bad team, and they are a bad team, but they seem like a great organization. What do you think?
yeah, I agree. They couldn't have done any better than what they did. I mean, yeah, it was tough. I mean, they raised this number up into the rafters.
Yeah,
I didn't catch if they actually retired it, but I see that they had put it up there. So it might be one like how the Leafs kind of do it to honor a player. So
right. Yeah,
um, they had his family there, and you could tell his dad was quite, you know, quite choked up there. So, but I mean, they did great. I mean, the warm ups. I know both teams wore Gaudreau jerseys. The
they
Panthers
did.
had Gaudreau on their jerseys for the whole warm up. So, I mean, I imagine what they're doing with those is probably auctioning them off, and the proceeds probably go to the family. Would be my guess. I didn't hear anything specific, but I would only assume so. No, it was great. I mean, I watched it. So, and I mean, I expect pretty much all the teams at their home openers to have some sort of, you know, thing going on in regards to that. I expect the Flyers to do that when they've been on the road the whole season so far. So I
Right.
think, and because he was from the Philadelphia area, I think they'll probably have something there as well. So we shall see. But yeah, no, Columbus did a great job. Couldn't have asked for really anything better. And it was good sportsmanship on the Panthers as well to participate in that. So yeah, it was great.
Okay. Well, hopefully Columbus can win some more games this year. I know they lost that game, but their hearts probably were not into that game. I would guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it would have been
I wouldn't
difficult.
blame them. Yeah, it'd be very difficult. Be a very difficult evening. Okay, well, let's go on to the second topic, Mike. Now, I have to at least bring up the Monday afternoon game in Ottawa against the Los Angeles Kings. Now, it was an 8-7 crazy overtime win for the Senators. Mike, did you see that coming? Did you see an 8-7 game coming between Ottawa and the LA Kings? And should people maybe be picking more Ottawa players in their pools because here they are scoring 8 goals? I mean, is this going to happen every game? Are they going to have the most goals ever scored in a season? What's going on here anyway?
Well, I mean, no, I didn't expect an 8-7 game, obviously, because they're, quite rare, in this day and age. So, but with that being said, I mean, the Kings are not a great defensive team. Neither is Ottawa, really, to be honest with you. And with that being said, the goalies. I mean, the Kings have Darcy Kemper, who I had said a few weeks back that he was not going to be great for them, and clearly was not. And as well, the Senators basically were playing their backup goalies because Allmark was out with an injury. So not surprising at the end of the day that there was that many goals scored, but you never expect an 8-7 game nowadays. So they're very few and far between. You could probably count them on one hand how many there are in the course of a season that there's that many goals scored in a game. So
Exactly, exactly. Well, so as you said, the Los Angeles goalie, Darcy Kemper, now he was left in net for all 8 goals. And now, all of a sudden, now, as of the day after the game, I believe, he was day to day.
yeah,
Mike, is Kemper really hurt? Or is it just his ego that's hurt? Why
uh,
was he left in for all 8 goals? And I have to ask this. I mean, I thought this was kind of a taboo. You didn't leave a goalie in for 8 goals. I mean, the last time I remember something like that happened, Patrick Roy left Montreal and never went back.
yeah,
I don't even know if it was 8 goals, but I still remember that.
yeah.
So,
It was 8 or 9.
yeah,
So, but you know, with the game being as close as it was, even though it was high scoring, I think that's probably the reason why they left him in. Unless maybe there was an issue that they couldn't put the backup in. Maybe the backup, who's David Riddick, maybe he's, maybe he wasn't 100%. Who knows? But just because the game was a close game, even though it was high scoring, I think that's probably the reason that they left him in. With the Kings missing Drew Doughty, they're not going to be as strong defensively as they might be with him. But Ottawa's got a really good offensive team. They've got two top lines that can score goals. So not surprising, I guess, that they can put up 8 goals, but a little unexpected, but not too surprising because they do have the talent to do so. But it's just something that you're not going to see very often. And you know what? It just coincidentally happened to be one of those days, I guess. So but as far as picking Ottawa players in your pools, for sure, if you can get some of these guys that are on the top 2 lines, if you can get, Sanderson or maybe even Shabbat, sure. I mean, Shabbat, I know he's day to day again, like when we talked a couple weeks back about
yep.
he's a little injury prone. So I do think they said he was going to play, but they said he was a little bit banged up. So not surprised.
Okay, all right. Well, I thought that the 8 goals was a little bit much, but it was a close game. I will give you that. I will give you that. It just seemed funny that all of a sudden the next game he's day to day, and then he didn't play the next start, right? So
Yeah, no, they called up the goalie from the minors there, Phoenix Copley. So, it just kind of it's one of those things that kind of when I've watched baseball all season here, whenever the starting pitcher gets bombed, all of a sudden, he's got a sore arm, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
anytime that a pitcher has a really, really bad game, there's, he's got a sore arm, he needs a couple days off, or whatever the case is. So, uh, I don't know if some of these guys kind of milk it into to making it look that way or what, but I can see where people would be a little suspicious of it. Like, you know, coincidentally, he after giving up this many goals or a pitcher gives up this many runs that they're all of a sudden hurt or not feeling the best. So, I mean, not saying it's not legitimate, not that I'm saying that whatsoever, but it does look a little bit, you know.
Well, it's a good point. I mean, maybe the team just like, oh, take a few days off, maybe just to protect them. Who knows? Like you said, we don't
Yeah,
know. We're not in the
like
dressing room.
refocus. I mean,
Yeah,
like
right.
when you look at some of the other goalies in the NHL so far, like uh, Jari and Georgiev, both have gotten lit up pretty good there lately. So we'll see if anything similar happens with those two. So
All right. Well, let's stick with the goaltending. We're going to the third subject for this evening. Mike, I want to talk a little bit about my Toronto Maple Leafs, and specifically the goaltending and Anthony Stolwers. Now
mhm.
he started 3 of the 4 Leaf games this year. He's done pretty good. I mean, you can't complain. Now I thought Joseph Walloway, he was supposed to be the main guy in Toronto this year, but I think Stollers, I think he's won that role. Now, do you agree with that? Do you think the Stollers now has the role? Now, if you do you also think that he could possibly be on a short leash? Any reason maybe to get Wool back out there if Stollers doesn't perform in a start or whatever? What do you think?
I think that this is Stolar's job to lose at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, going into the year, I know we had discussed this combo. And
Yep.
like I had said, Wall always seems to be hurt with something every so often. And coincidentally, before the season starts, the day of, I guess, they say he's hurt and can't play. So uh, it's one of those things where there's other goalies in the league that are very similar. Like you look at Aiden Hill of Vegas, like last year, he was hurt every other week. So, they had to play Thompson a lot. So, and this year it seems that, Wall is just kind of carrying over from last year because he was hurt a lot last year. So it just gives the other goalie the opportunity to step in and take the job. And I mean, I think Stallers is good enough to do it. I mean, he's on a good team. He's played well so far this year. I
Yeah, he
can't see
has.
why Toronto would give the ball back to Wall in this case if Stallers has been playing well. So I think moving forward, unless Stallers begins to struggle, I think he's going to start probably 65% of the games moving forward.
Yeah, and another thing too is I had heard, and I believe I heard this on TSN, I think, if I remember correctly, that Wall had practiced 3 days in a row.
I heard that he was at, I don't know if it was an informal practice or what, but I know that he was on the ice, they said, I believe today. So as far as how soon we're going to see him back, I don't think there's any real reason to rush him. I think the backup now, Hildeby, who was their top guy in the minors last year, I think he's decent enough as well. So
Okay,
having him play the backup role is fine. But I do know that they probably want to get him more starts because he's probably more their goalie of the future, I would guess.
sure, yeah, makes
We shall
sense.
see. So, if they want to get him more starts, then they've obviously got to send him back down because having him play a backup role is probably not ideal for his development. But you know,
Right, more starts is better off. Makes sense.
right,
Okay,
being
well
more
let's
starts in the minors, being successful there, building his confidence. I think that's probably what the Leafs are looking at more so because with Wall and Stallers both under NHL contracts, they have to have both of those guys up here. So, but I don't think there's any rush for Wall to get back. I mean, Stallers has played well. I think he was a good signing for them. I think he's probably going to be a better option than they had last year in Samsonov as far as consistency goes. So,
mhm.
so I think I think it's right now it's his job to lose. We'll see what Berube does, and I mean from his previous coaching experience when he was with St. Louis, he's always gone with the hot hand. So
Right. Why would he change now, right? I mean, it's
exactly.
unlikely. Okay, well, let's go on to the fourth topic for this evening. Let's chat a little bit about a few surprising teams this year. I know it's very early in the season, but I mean, I keep my eye on the standings constantly, and some
Yeah.
things popped up and took my attention here. The first one is the first one on the list, of course, Mike, is the Calgary Flames, who are 4-0 this year now. Mike, what in hell is going on in Calgary? I mean, is this just a fluke, or can Calgary keep this up? I know it's really early, but what do you think?
It is very surprising to be honest with you. I did not see Calgary starting off 4-0. So to say they can keep it up, I would be surprised if they did. I mean, they have some talented players, but I feel that the Western Conference has too many other teams that are more talented than they are. So I think it's a matter of time before they kind of come back down to earth. And I'm not saying that they're going to be absolutely brutal the whole season. If you asked me at the start of the season, yeah, I probably would have said that they're going to be absolutely brutal the whole season. But
We
it looks
did.
Yes. So, I mean, it looks like, Huberdeau has actually started to wake up and become a little bit of the player that he was before he got to Calgary because he's had a good
Yeah,
start to the season. So, their defense, I mean, has been good. The goaltending surprisingly has been good. I mean, they still give up some goals, but um, with the rookie Dustin Wolf and the backup Daniel Vladar. I mean, they've been decent in the net. So it's going to be interesting to see once they start uh, how they're going to respond when they actually get some injuries and stuff like that. If they can kind of maintain what they're doing. But yeah, it's good on them. They've get off to a great start. I'd be surprised if it continued, but who knows? We'll see what happens.
Stranger things have happened, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, 82 games is a long season, and 4 games is certainly not 82.
Yeah.
So,
Um,
all right, I'm just
when you do look at the Calgary Flames too, you look at the some of the other teams in the West. There's three other teams that have really struggled coming out of the gate that was not really expected. Edmonton, Colorado, and Nashville, who were three of the pretty much favorites in the West. Three out of the ones that most people would pick as a playoff team, and they've come out of the gate a little bit weak. So, Calgary
right.
coming out strong, and I have a feeling things will balance itself out, though.
Okay, well, since you mentioned a few of these other teams that I have listed here, the Predators is the next one on my list. They're 0-3,
Yeah.
which is a bit surprising. Now the Avalanche are 0-4, and I thought they looked terrible the other night. Oh my goodness, wow. And the Vancouver Canucks are 0-1-2, which is not great either. Did you want to say anything else about any of these teams? I mean, I know you were just speaking about them. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Well, I mean, Nashville, the only thing that I can think of why they've probably started off a little bit slower is they've got a lot of new faces there.
They
Like,
do.
and maybe they just haven't gelled yet. So, they brought in, mind you, the guys they brought in are strong players, good players, but maybe it's just taken them a little bit longer to get the chemistry going. And, when it comes to the NHL and their preseason, I really don't see the competitiveness in the preseason. It's more just, go out, get yourselves ready for the regular season type of thing. Because in the preseason, there are some games that, in some games it'd be hard to even name off any of these guys if they'd actually make the team. Um,
Absolutely.
so you can't really say, oh well, they played all the preseason together. They should be, but with that being said, I don't find that the preseason there's much emphasis on winning the games necessarily. I think it's more just trying to mesh with each other, and maybe it's just taking them a little bit longer. But then you got Colorado. Like I watched the game last night against Boston, and first half of that game it was Boston was all over them. Second half of the game totally different. Like Colorado was all over Boston. They just couldn't you know ultimately get that tying goal. I mean, they were only down by one, and then Boston got an empty net goal. But they looked a lot better in the second half of the game. But for them, I mean, the goaltending has just been terrible. And it's not that Colorado's not scoring any goals; they're just giving up way too many. So I think that's their problem, and would not be shocked to see them goalie shopping in some form or another between now and the end of the season. And then you got Vancouver, who started off a little bit slow as well.
I mean, 0-1-2 is not the worst record in the league, but it's not
It's not,
great.
but I mean, people probably would have thought they'd start off a little bit better. And it could just be a slow start. It's not that they had a lot of personnel changes, I don't find. So, they it could just be they started slowly. Then you got the Oilers that also started off super slow. I mean, McDavid and Draisaitl didn't score any goals until Draisaitl scored a couple against the Flyers, and so I mean they started off slow as well. And I mean their goaltending looked really bad the first few games as well. Skinner looked a little bit better against the Flyers, um, but yeah.
Well, the Oilers are my honorable mention that I have listed here. And it's lucky for them that they won that game, came back. I believe they were down by 2 goals to the Flyers. And it's lucky for them that they came back and won that game, or else I would have them on that list. Mike, what did you think about that?
Well, I watched the game. It was a good game. I mean, I found that the thing that hurt the Flyers a bit in that game is they took a lot of penalties, and you can't constantly put Edmonton on the power play. I know they may not
No,
have scored on all the power plays, but when you're putting a high powered offensive team, giving them a man advantage, eventually they're going to build off of that, even if they don't score. So, like I said, I watched the game. I could almost see what was going to happen because the Flyers started to get a little bit on their heels there at the end, and then the Oilers tied the game up, and then it goes to overtime, and little bit of a controversial ending, I guess. Sanheim had cut in towards the net. McDavid got his arm in on him, and Sanheim goes down. No call. Oilers go up the other end, score. So, and kind of irritated me because I think that if the shoe was on the other foot, if it was Sanheim with his arm around McDavid and McDavid goes down, I think that's a penalty. However, and I'm not just saying that because it's the Flyers, it could have been any of the other 30 teams in the NHL. However, I, and I don't want to say there's favoritism, but I think McDavid kind of got away with that one. But it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to stop Edmonton on a 3-on-1 the other way. Uh,
no,
so,
no,
you know,
not very often. Not unless they miss the net.
but no, exactly. But I mean, as well as part of that game, Mitchkov had a great game, scored a couple of goals, looked very good. As I said there a couple weeks back and last week included, like he's the best player on that team. Anybody that watches a Flyer game, if they tell you any different, they're crazy. It's cut and dry. He's the most skilled player on that team. He's what's going to determine how well that team does this year, and not single-handedly necessarily, but he's going to be the driving force on the how well the team looks.
Okay, well said, Mike. Well said. Now we're going to go on to our fifth and final topic. Now, this was an easy one for me to put in here. It's about Alexander Ovechkin because he added another milestone to his Hall of Fame career. There's no way this guy's not going to be in the Hall of Fame. He became the sixth player in NHL history to have 700 goals and 700 assists in a career. Now, the other five players are Wayne Gretzky, surprise, Gordie Howe, surprise, Phil Esposito, Marcel Dion, who I used to really love watching when I was younger, and Jaromir Jagr. Mike, what do you think? Is Alexander Ovechkin one of the greatest players of all time?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's no player that's played in this era. And don't get me wrong, there are some newer players in the league too that are probably going to be even better, like McDavid and Draisaitl and some of these guys, maybe Austin Matthews. But for Ovechkin to go out and put up the points he did after missing time with injuries and then the lockouts and that sort of stuff, without that, he'd be even further ahead than where he is. And the game has gotten so much uh, better and more difficult for the players nowadays than from way back when it was in the 80s. So
Oh, the 80s. We watch games from the 80s. It's brutal.
very well. I mean, the goalies looked like toothpicks in the net back then. Now, like these guys, they're bigger. Two, the equipment is obviously bigger as well, which helps. They've got goalie coaches and all this sort of stuff. So, scoring goals and getting points in today's game is a lot more difficult than it was, back in the 80s. I remember used to, seeing scores, and it wouldn't be surprising to see the Oilers win a game like 9-1 or 10-1 against some of these weak teams. Like
Yes.
it happened a lot, but you're never going to see that nowadays. So, Ovechkin is without a doubt, an automatic first ballot Hall of Famer. And the funny thing is, his last game they moved him to right wing. I don't know if he's played right wing in the past, but and I don't know the reasoning behind it, but they said that Ovechkin was going to play right wing last game, which was
I didn't know that. I did not know
yeah.
that.
So he ended up getting 2 assists. So, but yeah, so putting him at right wing, I guess it's more of a challenge for him as well to play a position that he's probably not familiar with. Um, but yeah, no question, Ovechkin's going to be, in the Hall of Fame the first, opportunity that he's on the ballot. So
A surprise for me was when I was looking at that is that Mark Messier wasn't in that list, but he didn't have anywhere near 700 goals, I don't believe, in his career. So,
yeah,
but anyway, but yeah, I thought, wow, here's Ovechkin bringing another milestone. We got to talk about him. There's no way I can't add him to tonight's discussion. Was there anything else that you wanted to add to this discussion this evening, Mike?
well, I mean, you talk about milestones, and I believe last night Malkin scored his, was it
Oh
500th,
yeah,
600th goal,
I
and
think it was
Crosby got his 500th, I
600
think, 500 goals, and Crosby got his 1600th point. So in the same game.
in the same
So
game. That's right. Yeah,
luckily, it wasn't on the same goal, or else they'd probably be fighting over the puck, maybe.
have to cut it in
Yeah,
half.
so and Pittsburgh watched some of that game last night as well, and they're 5 shots in, they're down 3-0. Pulled Jari, put in the backup goalie, and then they came back and win the game. So um, and not to knock on Jari, but I think his days as the starting goaltender there, they're probably numbered. But I mean, the tough part is they kind of gave him a pretty big contract not that long ago, so
Eeh.
it's going to be a little bit challenging because I really think that he's not going to be the starter for very long, and if they do put him as a starter, it's only because of the contract that he's got. So we'll have to see what happens there in Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm sure Pittsburgh players want to win, and if he's not going to help them win, they're going to want him gone. So,
Yeah,
or management is.
this is the tough thing with specifically with goalies because you can only have two on your team, uh, ideally. And if one of them is carrying a large contract, I mean, it's tough to you can't just, you know, bury that contract in the minors necessarily. So, and I mean, when we want, if we just to continue on a little bit about goalies and contracts, Jake Ottinger signed today to the same exact contract as Jeremy Swayman signed, which is a great deal for Dallas. To get him at 8.25 a year for 8 years, because he's better than Swayman, in my opinion.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and he's on a team I think that's a little bit younger, that has probably a little bit more long term success in going forward. The Bruins are uh, they've got some guys that are aging, so I mean it's it's a little bit tougher for them. But I think Dallas is, and they were a good team the last few years to begin with. So and I think that they're a team on the rise, and to get Ottinger signed, at a very reasonable rate. Um, with that being said, Shesterkin, the Rangers were negotiating with him on a contract, and apparently he turned down a contract that would have made him the highest paid goalie in the league, which would have been more than Carey Price, and he turned that down. So I don't know what those negotiations are going to look like, considering,
Interesting.
and I don't think that, I mean, I think Shesterkin is great, but I don't think he's a lot better than Jake Ottinger is. So if he's expecting, to break the bank, I think that the Rangers are going to come back with this 8.25 and kind of maybe meet in the middle somewhere, I would guess.
Well, I think if he was to leave the Rangers there, that would be quite. I think that would hurt the Rangers quite a bit if they were to lose
Oh,
him somehow.
absolutely. Yeah. Um, and just to add a little bit on, not quite sure what the market for a goalie is going to be in the off season either. So if he does go to free agency, who's going to pay him all this money? I mean, a lot of these teams
Because a
that,
lot of teams can't.
well, a lot of teams can't afford to pay that amount of money, um, unless you're looking at, some of the rebuilding teams. But if you're looking to go to play on a contender, it's going to be really tough because the contenders generally have most of their money all tied up right now, either in a goalie already or in their forwards and their defense. So, we'll see where it goes. I think Shesterkin's going to end up re-signing with the Rangers either way. I mean, I think he's a good fit there. I mean, if he can play in New York, he can pretty much play anywhere. So, I mean, it's the Rangers, right? I mean, it's not like they're hurting for cash, like they sell out all
No.
the time. So, I'm sure that they're going to find a way to give him what he's kind of looking for the most part, just to keep him in the fold. So,
Right, right. And I always believed that there was a bit of a rivalry with New York and their teams. Like the Yankees are doing so well this year. You know what I mean? The Rangers want to do well, right? All those all those New York teams are. I believe they want to do as well as the other guys. So
yeah,
easier said than done, obviously. But
right,
you lose that goalie somehow, and it's going to make things a lot more difficult, more than likely. So.
yeah.
Well, okay. Well, I think we'll leave it at that for this evening, then, Mike. Remember, guys, like, share, subscribe. Let us know where we went wrong, because I'm sure that lots of people out there believe we did. And we'll see you all next week. Later.
See you later.